Hello, listeners. Today's episode is for everyone. Tune in as I get a chance to talk to Christina Conway, who takes us through her amazing artwork, and she tells us all about her experience and journey in dealing with her medium of paint. She creates these amazing, beautiful 3D images, but that's not all she's known for, and that's not all she does. So tune in and check it out. Welcome to IPA Sessions. Welcome to IPA Sessions. I'm your host, Kay Jacob. We got a special guest today, a real independent artist, an actual artiste, Miss Christina Conway. She is an artist, and she is local here to the Los Angeles, California area. Christina, say hi.
Hi, everybody.
Christina, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
So I'm an artist living and working in Los Angeles. Also work as a location manager in film and TV, which is how we met.
That's right. This is technically one of my mini bosses that I go through on the job.
I've raised a family. I have 2 kids that are now 20 and 18, which sounds bananas. And we lived mostly in Venice Beach while we did that.
Oh, wow. So you're not only a hard worker, you're a hardworking mom, and you're trying to do the independent art style on the side as well. Is this something that you really enjoy as a hobby, or is this something you're trying to pursue as part of a career path too? Is there any financial gain that you can try and get from this?
Well, I mean, the art world is pretty bananas, but it's been increasing, I mean, in dollars for a lot of people, but also in scope and reachability. And, a huge factor in that is things like Instagram, which I'm pretty active on for my work, which has led me to getting 2 solo shows this year.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I was really psyched about that. One in Santa Monica and one in Silver Lake. And I almost sold out the show that I just had in Silver Lake. So
wow, nice.
But, to be fair, with all the money, if I really tally it up, I'm not in the black.
Hey, that's good.
Materials and time spent, stuff like that. I'm not a profitable artist, but I'm a selling artist. So hey,
balance out at least, right?
Yeah. And, so for me, but being a mom is a huge part in my artistic timeline, because I really took a pause in actively practicing my art when my kids were young, and the contributing factors to that were work. Our film work is crazy and
insane hours. Yeah.
Yeah, really crazy hours. But my husband's also a location manager, and then he's also an entrepreneur. So he would have, I put a lot of my energy into his projects kind of early on as well. And mine were sort of backseat to that. So a lot of the art that I was doing at that time was another mom and I in Venice had a little kids art class where we sort of exposed them to the masters, like Pollock. That's really easy for kids, where we would show some videos of them working, show them some art books, and then give them the materials and put down huge tarps,
I love that. No, you're being encouraging and inspirational to children. I love that. As part of my show is providing inspiration. So that's great.
Yeah. And we actually ended up having a show for their works at the end at a local coffee shop.
Oh, that's cool.
And so it was I was always doing stuff, but not really actively pursuing my daily work and where I wanted to go and what I wanted to say in my work. It was more just kind of keeping my hands on materials, making notes for future projects. It was oh, when I get the time, and honestly, I kind of regret that. And I tell new moms and dads now to really make sure you're taking the time to pursue your things. Cause I think it's also, your passions or whatever they are. I think it's a really good example to your kids to see you doing that as well.
No, it's wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah. I know it's a struggle for a lot of people with time and finances, but just, it's important to take care of yourself. And I didn't do that enough, I really think.
Well, and that's part of the reason why I bring up, I like to ask some of my guests about the financing of it, is that, a lot of us independent artists, when we're trying to start a career, you do put in a lot more work and money yourself than you get back. But if you're passionate and you stick to it, eventually things start to pay off. Like for you, for example, you just said that your last show, practically sold it out, which is great, especially considering that, you've been coming back into this. We came out of a pandemic, things are opening up. So it's good to see that you're breathing life back into your work, which is good. And that it's, having a payoff for you. I kind of want to go through a little bit about your art now. I want you to take us through your process. What's your prep, and how time consuming can it be, and exactly what is your style? And for those of you who are listening, you can follow Christina on Instagram to see a lot of her artwork. It's Christina Conway Art.
That's exactly right. Christina Conway Art at Instagram. There it is.
Yeah, I'll have links in the show notes. Don't worry.
It can be super time consuming, actually, which is another trick, because right now I've been, the past couple of years, I used to work mostly, I want to say acrylics, but honestly, a lot of times it was house paint, because you can get, here's a tip. At Home Depot, there's a lot of times big cans of house paint that somebody has asked for and then never came and picked up. So there's little like test ones for like 50 cents and then a huge big can for like $5 or $10.
Hey, look at that. Saving money already. I love it.
Working on a large scale, that can really cover some
That's cool.
space for you. But so I did work a lot in house paint.
Fantastic.
But, I've gone on to, I saw some people, I don't know, I think Pinterest or Instagram. I'm always like deep diving in those dumb places. I saw some people messing around with epoxy resin, and a lot of it, I don't want to poop on anybody's thing, but a lot of it's a little bit corny and repetitive. I just thought there was a lot more that could be done with that material. And I liked what people were doing where they were tinting the epoxy resin, but a lot of them were doing sort of pours where it was, sort of like psychedelic, free-flowing things, which
kind of abstract. Yeah,
very abstract, really, really pretty, but kind of repetitive for me personally. And I just wanted to explore more of a variety in that. So what I've done is sort of made, I don't pour it all together. I pour each layer individually so that it kind of builds on top of itself, and it gives it more of a sculptural feel, even though I'm working on a flat surface of a board.
Oh, nice. Like a 3D effect.
Yeah, it does. So you get really hard to photograph a lot of times, but it's sort of layers, and I like how it kind of like reaches out and reaches in. And then I love the surface of epoxy resin. It's so shiny and touchable because I'm making it and I make the rules. I say, go ahead and touch it. I've always hated that. And, I understand we can't have everybody's, oily fingers on artwork or it would be destroyed over time.
Well, and some art, depending on the material you use, can be ruined by the oil and grease and fingers. I get that. And the cool thing about the art world, like you said, is you don't always want something repetitive. I mean, part of being creative is doing something new and trying to make even more, bring something, what's the word I'm looking for? I can't really think of anything else but new, just something more creative and new when you're dealing with art, because you don't want to become repetitive, because you can find yourself in that position too. Like, it seems like maybe even you yourself felt like you were going through that, and then you found ways to become inventive. And that's the word I'm looking for, inventive.
Well, and I think, what I was seeing people doing with this particular material, with the resin, was more like craft show art, right? And that's fantastic. I just really wanted to explore something more meaningful to me. So my first series was a variety of flesh tones layered on each other. And because I am now almost 50, it was sort of dealing with our changing shapes, and it was a really female perspective. So I had like layering images of sort of body shapes over each other to show like where we go with ourselves.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
And how that's seen. Some people thought they were a little sexy. That's okay. Some people thought they were very mothering. I had a lot of different responses, which was interesting.
It's kind of what you want though, right?
Yeah. Some people were saying like, oh, it looks like melted, it looks like sexy, it looks fleshy. I'm like, yes, it looks like all that stuff, whatever you want it to look like.
It's your interpretation. Yeah. But it all sounds positive too. That's what's great, is you're not getting any negativeness from it. I'm sure you do occasionally, but
here's another thing too. So I didn't go to art school. I'm self-taught. Both of my parents were artists, but they were factory workers. So it's like a very like blue collar, do it yourself. You know, it was always important for them both to be practicing their art, whether my father played drums, he drew, and he was a photographer. My mom was incredibly gifted with all fabric arts as well as a seamstress. She also paints and would make a lot of she's made everything in our house basically, you know, from Christmas ornaments to our clothes. So, I mean, it was in the house, you know. My brother was a really great artist. He drew, you know, a lot of comic book style things, but he was super good.
You inherited a lot of natural talent.
I think so. My parents even moved, you know, when they bought their house, they were really young hippie parents. And when they bought their house, they got a smaller house in a district that had a school district that had a great arts program specifically, because that was important to them. That's led to, you know, me always finding a way to you know, have an artistic outlet.
I like that.
Watching them.
Very nice. We were just kind of going through, you're just slowly taking us through your process, the style of your art, and just a little bit more of a technical walkthrough of kind of what you do. You talked about layering it and spreading the paint out to where it kind of stacks and creates almost a 3D look.
So the technical part, it's tricky. My studio is my garage, which is helpful. I would like to move out and have more space, but the helpful thing about that is keeping it close to home. It allows me to dip in and dip out. Because when I pour a layer of the resin, I have to wait at least 12 hours for that one layer to cure. So each of my pieces can really take a lot of time. And then the other thing that happens is I need a controlled environment because things can just stick onto the surface of the resin and then be locked in forever. So like one time I had this really, I loved what had happened. And I was like, okay, good night, peace. I'll see you in the morning. It's going to be great. And I came back and there was a huge moth stuck to it.
Oh, wow.
I was so upset. I had to basically like start from scratch.
It didn't work out. It didn't look cool with the moth.
No, it did not. It did not. It was not the right place. But yeah, that's happened a lot. And so I have to kind of like check on it a lot. And, you know, the process is, you know, you mix the resin and you have, I think like 20 minutes really to pour and do what you want with it and make it go where you'd like it to go. It can be a bit unpredictable, especially when you're adding tints and colors to it, because now you're kind of throwing off the chemical balance of the resin mix. So sometimes it can stay tacky, which is terrible. You want a nice hard surface. And then I have to kind of like pick at it and hit it with the heat gun to get any bubbles out and take any dust out or a little hair here and there. You know, we have a lot of cats in my house. So you never know when one of those is going to come down. But that part can be, I like it because I'm so focused on that. I mean, I'll listen to music a lot or sometimes podcasts.
Hey.
But I'm really focused on the process of it. And it's a nice sort of meditation, right? Like, you know, you really have to be paying attention to what you're doing or it can get messed up.
I like that you said the word meditation. I was looking at some of your pictures that you have on Instagram of your artwork. And one of the ones I really enjoyed is, I don't know how else to describe it, but it looks like strawberry ice cream. So one of my favorite colors is pink. And this is a very vivid pink picture, but it's so unique because you seem to have multiple layers of different shades of pink with a little bit of a cream color in there. And it looks like this ice cream scoop with 8 stacks of ice cream scoops just kind of melted together. And it's a really beautiful painting, but it felt very calm and it just kind of took me to my childhood. I have a kid, so it made me think of I got to get ice cream today. Yeah. So I love that feeling that it's so unique to see that it looks, like you said, it's hard to take a picture of that 3D look. So it does look like one image, but you can tell that it's layered and it has this unique, just kind of almost a wavy effect. But it's very smooth, like actual cones of ice cream melting. It's really unique. Kind of fluffy too, like if it was cotton candy in a way.
I know you do. You want to touch it, right?
Yeah.
That's what I think about it. The person who purchased that is a DJ that lives in the Hollywood Hills, and she put it in her green tiled bathroom, and the contrast of the green tiles and that gorgeous pink piece.
Oh, I bet it pops.
And she thought it was really sexy. Actually, she responded in a sexy way to that. But I've also heard people say the ice cream. I've heard people say, oh, it looks like spilled makeup, or like these different things.
I just think it's neat how you found so many shades of pink to use, because I was like, I didn't know this many shades of pink could exist. And it's so cool.
A lot of mixing color and, trial and error. And It is, yeah. It's funny that you said ice cream. Somebody else said that specifically. But I like the joyful idea that evokes. And to me, it was really centered around, bodies, that sort of feeling. That was where I was headed with it. I am still kind of gobsmacked and honored that people are buying this stuff and they want to live with it in their house. It makes me
great.
so happy. And whatever it evokes in them that makes them want to live with my work, I do not care what they interpret it as at all. It thrills me to no end to think that somebody wants that in their home where they live and to live with my art. It's amazing.
That's one of the most exciting parts about being an independent artist is when people actually enjoy your work and want to support you and purchase that and put it in their house, like you said. I mean, it's the payoff. It's the real financial gain is that you're gaining the support and that your art is really coming through. And that's amazing. So congratulations on that.
I know. Thank you. I mean, I'm not like, I know, isn't it crazy? But to me, it's still wild. Like the show that I just had in Silver Lake, people were talking to me about my pieces and what they saw in them. And sometimes it was so like outside of anything I had imagined. It kind of blew my mind. But that's, I'm sure everybody's heard that said, that's like, once you put your art out into the world, it doesn't belong to you anymore. It's whatever people see and whatever they need from it. Right.
Yeah. Artwork is like an opinion. Everyone's got one.
Man, that's true. Yeah, they definitely have opinions about it. Oh, that's what it was. I was going to say I've been fairly lucky in that I haven't had a ton of negative response. I do get critique from people close to me. And I'll say my toughest critic is my daughter, who's 20. And I really respect her eyes. She's a great artist herself. And she will just come and tell me exactly what she thinks. I don't necessarily have to agree with her, but she's usually pretty dead on to what may need to be tweaked in it. And she's a huge part of my practice, honestly. My husband will sometimes add things too, but I get weirdly grumpy about his input.
It's not the same as the brutal honesty from your daughter.
Yeah. And then, my son is like, yeah, it's cool. No, he's like, sometimes he'll tell me things that he sees in it too. And I love to hear what he thinks as well. But the people in my family really, honestly, their input goes a long way.
Well, and it sounds like you have a strong support network with your family as well, which is great.
I really do. Yeah, they all show up to my shows. My husband will help me like lug all my big pieces around and help me install and do stuff like that, or, help me cut wood down if I need to sometimes.
Oh, and that was something I wanted to ask you too. What is your canvas? Do you use different types of canvas? Do you paint on wood or do you paint on a certain type of paper material, a certain canvas sheet?
Yeah, with the resin, it has to be something stronger than canvas, or it'll bow and bend, right? It's too heavy. It needs that really hard backing of wood or wood panels. You could purchase wood, already framed pieces from, art supply stores, or, sometimes I go to Home Depot and just grab a big sheet of wood if I want to do a bigger piece. And, I am thrifty in those ways.
Got to be inventive. I love it. Thank you for sharing your process with us and telling us a little bit about your artwork. Now we're going to get into some of the fun, tough questions, the aggravating things that you have to deal with sometimes. And the first one is, what's the biggest challenge you had to overcome, or maybe you're even still working on it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest challenge is that I feel like a real outsider in the art world. I'm still really learning how things work. I didn't go to art school. I didn't have professors and critique classes to guide me through, how things are done. I'm really just learning it all myself.
A trial and error.
Yeah. I think that's the most challenging. Well, it's maybe the most intimidating to me, a lot of imposter syndrome.
You're not the only artist to say that. I've had many guests on the show and a lot of them feel that way, especially when it comes to musicians and painters. I've noticed they all feel like they have a little bit of imposter syndrome sometimes.
Yeah. And I think especially normal. In the DIY world and when you're self-taught, you're like, what am I doing?
You're like, oh, wait, did I take this from someone else because subconsciously? And it's like, no, it's just that little bit of what's the word I'm looking for? A small bit of insecurity that you work on and you learn to just become stronger through it.
Yeah. And the more that I learn that even a lot of the most well-known artists would still have imposter syndrome sometimes and go through times of doubt. And I guess you just put it out there and see how it's received. It's really, it doesn't necessarily, I mean, especially at this level, it doesn't really matter what an art critic would write or what they would think about it. necessarily right now. It's if people are seeing it and they're purchasing it themselves, that's really what matters to me. So I guess that's, what's the other hard question?
That was one of them. Yeah. So the next question I have for you is just what's something unexpected that you had to face? Maybe something you learned in the moment, something completely new that it wasn't on your radar, you weren't expecting it, and it just happened, and you had to learn it.
I mean, there was so much trial and error with learning how to deal with epoxy resin. I mean, I'd always been just pencils and paint. And this was way out of anything. I mean, I had to learn what one levels the best, what one stays clear in UV lighting. Some of them can tint yellow and kind of ruin your whole piece. You better wear gloves. You need to have a well-ventilated space so you're not poisoning yourself. All of the stuff dealing with the epoxy was all new to me, and I had to learn, and there was a ton of trial and error. And a lot of my pieces I know I said it's layered, but there's like a lot of my pieces have several failed pieces under them. Where things just went wrong, like a moth flew into it, or, I went too hard with the heat gun and it actually bubbled up and burned the epoxy. I've done a lot of learning curve with that material.
Yeah, no, that's wild. It honestly, to me, it sounds like almost everything involved with painting in general is to be unexpected. It's something that you find out, you see what happens. You go for it.
Yeah, I think so. And especially, if you can, when it's just straight painting, you're training your hand, you're literally training yourself to make the marks that you want to make. It seems so simple. You look at something and like, oh, I'm just going to paint that down here and my hand will do exactly what I want it to. It doesn't always work that way. You could be not, it's just, there's so many things that are not successful. And I also had to really learn that mistakes are the greatest gift, right? You learn so much through your mistakes.
Hey, as Bob Ross says, happy accidents.
Yeah. I mean, they don't feel happy at the time.
Of course.
Infuriating sometimes. But those are often the ones that stick the hardest too. And then, that is the whole process. Like if everything just magically worked out exactly the way you wanted it to, it wouldn't really be any kind of challenge. And oftentimes it's taking, the thought. I mark down notes a lot. I mark it on my phone. I mark them in little, sketchbooks or journals of ideas. I see something on the street and I'm like, oh, what if I had that color scheme, but it was shaped like this? I try to make those notes. And then to take that problem and solve it in the studio is the challenge, but it's the greatest time. That's the greatest time. Like showing the work is terrifying and sweaty and kind of fun also, but like just
makes you anxious,
so uncomfortable. Yeah, it's so uncomfortable standing there and talking to people. It's really hard for me. I don't love that part.
Which is funny because you're 9 to 5, you're a location manager, and that's all we do is talk to people.
I know we chit-chat, but it's all about other stuff, right? It's not about me personally.
Yep.
I'm going on a whole new my whole new series is completely inspired by our work.
Oh, cool.
Because, as you know, we go out and we take photos of our potential locations, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
which we call scouting.
We scout the places and then we show them to the directors and they choose what they like. But I have a gazillion photos of empty spaces, empty rooms, empty streets, these empty spaces. And early on in my practice, I was using wire to make sort of little skeletal figures. That I would then embed in the resin.
Oh, like little armatures?
Yeah, and some of them would be completely encased inside the resin, like trapped in there. And some you could actually touch and see they were sort of bending outwards and not completely, flush inside the resin. And people liked those, but I sort of had moved away from it because I got into this whole like body, image series that I was doing. But now I'm taking photo transparencies, the see-through like you would have on the overhead as a kid in school.
Oh, yeah.
Encase those in resin and then layer on these sort of skeletal figures to fill up the spaces. And I'm really into that, but it's creating some problems that I'm trying to solve as well on, how many layers, how much color, how do I want it to look? I'm trying to build them into sort of these like shadow boxes So they're almost like dioramas.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of work to do on that, but I'm really excited.
That's great. I mean, once again, it's all unexpected and you just learn in the moment.
Yeah,
I feel like that question is just your everyday as an artist. You're just every day it's unexpected.
Yeah.
I learned something new that I just don't expect. That's really cool.
That's what's fun is like by the time I'm showing one series, like the last series I just showed was inspired by the island Catalina, which is right off of Los Angeles. My husband is a sailor. We had a sailboat, and when COVID hit, we went over to Catalina, after some of the restrictions had been taken away. But there is this place called Emerald Bay that has a Boy Scout camp. But of course, no Boy Scouts were there because it was still pretty restrictive. And we had some guests with us, and we hung out on the island, and it's like with not a ton of people there, and, kayaked and snorkeled and hiked and hung out and had bonfire on the beach. And it was a really magical time, and watching, the mist come and go and the sunsets and the sunrise, and spending a lot of time outdoors, more than you may do in your day to day.
It's amazing how the pandemic put everyone outside and reconnected with everything around us, where it's like, it's actually really nice out here. I never thought to leave my room.
Yeah, right, exactly.
You appreciate it more.
It was fully inspired, it has a ton of, earth and sea and sky tones, and then these vibrant, sort of sunset and sunrise, splashes of color.
Like the perfect mixture of what do you call warm and cool colors?
Yeah, well, and some of them are very, sort of like gray when the mist would come in, and they're a little more, obvious what they are. So like a landscape or something. But by the time I was showing that, I was already like really thinking about this next series that I'm working on. So it's like I'd finished all those, and I was already, when I was working on those, I was already kind of past the sort of like body image ones. So it's like each time I'm showing, I'm already like my brain's already thinking about the next thing I want to work on. I really want to tell everybody about that. So you're standing there talking about this work, and I'm like, okay, yeah, this was really fun to do. But you know what? I really want to talk about these other things. So I don't know. I guess that's an ongoing process.
It just keeps you busy. All right. So this kind of leads me into my next question here, which is what's a hard reality you've had to deal with and accept? Something discouraging that you pushed through or resolved, or maybe it's still a part of something you're dealing with right now?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is, like you were saying, we're self-funded oftentimes as independent artists, and I certainly am. And that's a challenge in finding the space and the time. I'm like really finding my space was a thing. Like when we moved into this house 6 years ago, we had a garage, we have a garage, and I feel like I'm both figuratively and literally pushing back to make my space in there. Because people just dump stuff in the garage, I'm like, no, this is my studio.
But this is where boxes go.
Yeah, and it just gets like thrown out there. I'm like, disrespectful. But honestly, really just like pushing back and keeping that space. And like, I really have to battle for it sometimes. And I think in the last couple of years, they've gotten more respectful. And I think the more I show, the more the family, sort of respect what I'm doing a little more and like give me that, they're like, okay, mom.
All right, you win.
Yeah. But that's really a challenge. And, over the years that was a part of, I like working on a bigger scale, and it's a real challenge to find the space when you've got kids and you're on a budget. Living in Los Angeles, it's expensive. Getting that square footage isn't easy.
So a hard reality is, can you do this?
Yeah, space. Honestly, it's just like, where can you do this was really the thing. And I really applaud and admire people who fully live the artist life, who just like chose from the beginning, I'm living this artist life. I have my day job. I've always had day jobs. I waited tables, I bartended, I did all those things. I got into locations. The people who just have fully dedicated themselves to their art and make that absolutely everything that they do. I just think that's so brave, honestly, to make that your life and really dedicate yourself to that.
It takes a lot. Yeah. It is brave. It's scary what you do, and you step out into it and you just go for it. So moving forward, we talked about, the challenges, the hard realities, the unexpected, but what is something that you did expect and that you wanted from this project, from your artwork?
Oh, something I did expect? Well,
Or, just something that you wanted. Like, what did you really want out of this whole
I
process?
really wanted at least one stranger to purchase one of my artworks, and that has happened a bunch. So
Hey,
that made
success.
me super excited.
You made it.
Like if a friend or relative buys your piece, you're like, oh, are you just trying to be nice to me?
But a stranger, that's when you know you've made it.
Yeah. Well, that's what, to me, they don't have a connection to me. They saw a piece of art and put their money down and then took it home and I assume put it up or live with it somewhere or even gifted it to somebody else. But
They invested in you.
oh God, that just touches my heart so much. It makes me so happy and it's completely validating. So I got that and I just want more of that.
Hey, I love that. And that might answer my next question as well. Maybe it's a 2-for-1 answer. But
Yeah.
what is your most valuable takeaway that you've learned from this entire experience so far? What is something that, maybe helped you grow and improve as an artist?
I do think publicly showing my art was, it's risky, right?
Mm-hmm.
It could be that nobody shows up, nobody buys anything. Some of the biggest artists that are considered masters, their first solo shows sold literally nothing at all. So that doesn't necessarily mean your art is not valuable to somebody else. It just means it wasn't the right time for it sometimes for people. But I think it really, I guess, sort of gave me permission to continue, even though I would anyway, in my own mind, right?
Right? Yeah.
Okay. Because my thing was always, I'm just doing this because I feel compelled to do this. I want to play with these materials. I want to see if I can make this thing that's in my mind. Right.
Yeah. It's kind of like a validation in a way.
Yeah. But then, and it's, I only have so much wall space in my own house. Right. So
Can only hang up so much of your own work.
Okay. We need to get this stuff out of here. But, yeah, it was just, I think, just really validating in some strange way, like I said, having been self-taught and, DIY and struggling for my space and then show it and be well received was just fantastic.
I think that's a very valuable lesson. That's a great feeling. Again, it validates you. It makes you feel more confident. And now you've already said, you've pushed through to these, you're doing series, you're working on a certain, form of paintings that you're going to be doing as a group. Like here's some, one project with this concept. And then you're like halfway through, you're like, oh, I got another concept I want to work on. And you're not just painting one image, you're painting a bunch. I think that's really cool. What's your drive? What motivates you, Christina?
I don't know where that comes from, to be honest. Like I said, there's just always been, dating back from when I was a child, that it was almost expected to express yourself somehow artistically.
Great parents. I love that.
I think it's just, I'm just compelled and I don't know why. You know what I mean? Like sometimes it's something that I kind of want to say. Sometimes it's just images I have in my head, or I want to try a new material. There's just always something that I want to do artistically. So, like I said, finding the time and the space to do it, make it happen.
I actually like that. It sounds to me like expression is what drives you to express yourself.
Yeah.
And it's honesty. I like that.
I think deep down inside, and I don't know if every artist feels that way, but I honestly think part of it is fear of death, right? And you want to leave something behind of yourself. And I think at the very base of it, that may be what it is. Because why do you feel the need to put it down in any medium, right? Whether it's film, this podcast, music, writing, whatever it is, why do you really want to do that? Like you want to be seen and heard right now, or like also in the future? You want to kind of leave something of yourself in this world. You want to imprint yourself. I think probably every artist has that at the base of what they do.
I'd be lying if I didn't say that's part of the reason why I do this. I do want to leave something behind. I do want to put my mark out there. And for me, it's also about sharing. That's why with this show, I want to present a platform to allow others to put their mark out there too. And it's something that together we can share and know that, hey, we did something. We did our part. We did our best. And I love that.
Yeah, I like that. Did our part and did our best. I like that a lot.
Okay. Wrapping this all up, is there any advice or something that you would like to say to anyone looking to do what you do, to any aspiring artists out there, whether they're painters, designers, sculptors? What good piece of advice could you give them?
I think it's the things I've already said is like, make sure, fight for the space to do your work. Make sure you make the time for yourself and the space. And I think finding mentors is excellent. I've found some of those, either online and, a few friends, and then just, learning everything I possibly can.
Yep, guidance never hurts.
Yeah. Yeah. And being open to that, look at critiques and decide what you think about them, right? Like mostly critiques are opinions.
Yeah. It's always good to listen. I do this podcast, but I try and write on the side. And when I have friends give me feedback, I love hearing it, especially when my friends are being honest enough to tell me something they don't like. I listen to that. I may not want to hear it.
No, yeah.
But I absolutely listen to it, because when I go into my next session or when I go into my editing, whatever it is that they mention, I think on that and I go, well, how can I improve this? If this is something that they're saying and it's just one person telling me this, there's a chance that the others listening might think the same.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's always good to listen and hear it, even if you don't want to, especially if you don't want to hear it.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to be able to be open to criticism, but that doesn't mean that you should just automatically accept and believe that what they're saying is true. Like you said, it's an opinion, and it doesn't hurt to think on that. It can only make you better at developing your skills.
I agree. And it's nice to get, those outside opinions when a lot of this work can be so solitary.
Mm-hmm.
And you can get to in your own head or in your own thing where you're not, you need to like step back and see a bigger vision sometimes. Even if you're expressing something deeply personal, there may be tweaks that you need to actually deliver that message, right, in a better way. So it is good to hear that. I do have my brutal critic, my daughter. And she's
the best one.
I really appreciate it, though. It's great to know, there's somebody like that who doesn't intend any harm at all, but is just super honest. That's amazing to have.
No, I love that. That's good. Because, in the end, they love you, they care about you, and they only want you to be better.
Yeah, it's great. It's so good to have. When I was in college, I was actually a writing major, and I kind of switched over into editorial journalism, where I edited on my college paper for a little while. And the whole process of like editing other people, it's so satisfying, not in a mean way at all, but like, here's how this can be better. And you can deliver your message in a more clear way, right? So I like that process.
So it's the only way to grow, really, is to learn from these things, good or bad. And I think we learn the most too whenever we're feeling at our worst about something. We really open up and listen to it and finally accept that, hey, okay, this could have been better. And instead of beating yourself up about it, you move forward at, all right, now how do I make it better? And
I think a lot of times the feedback I get when somebody's saying something, it's like in the back of my mind, I also knew that. You know what I mean?
You're like, I didn't need your validation for what I was already thinking.
Well, no, like if there's a sort of something that could be better and changed better, I kind of already knew that, but I was like, oh, okay, fine. Like I was almost generally it's like I was almost being lazy about it, right? Like I didn't want to go and fix it.
It's like consensus says, the general consensus says, all right, we agree on this. Great. Now I have to do something about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Christina, thank you so much for coming on today. Thank you for sharing your journey with us and your experience in all of this. Congratulations again on your last art show. I know as of right now, there is nothing in particular happening at the moment. We're recording this a little early.
Yeah, I have a zine that I kind of started with my daughter and my son's girlfriend because they have a lot of art and photos and writing that they wanted to put out. And so we were taking submission that's called Nipples Zine.
Zine. What is zine exactly? That's new to me.
A zine, it came from like, the Riot Girl 90s time, punk rock, when people would just do like photocopy little magazines that they would hand out and do completely themselves. Very DIY. Most of our local libraries have a zine collection, which is kind of amazing. It's still going strong. So we're sort of working on that too. And we're going to put out the first issue.
Okay.
In probably February it'll be out. Yeah.
And will that be like a digital subscription somebody can sign up through email or something with, or would it be
There will be physical forms, and there's an Instagram. It's called Nipples Gallery. That's the Instagram for that, and you can find it there. Yeah, it's for anybody with nipples.
That's everyone, I believe. That's fantastic. Well, Christina, thank you so much for coming on today. Thank you for sharing your journey and your experience in the art world with us. I've learned a lot, and I think it's fascinating, your style that you do. Like I said, I love the sexy ice cream. I thought it was great. This is your moment now. You've been speaking this whole time, and now I'm giving you the floor once again to say whatever you'd like to say. Put yourself out there. Please tell us how others can follow you, how we can find you. And of course, as this episode gets closer to date, any art shows coming up, I will be happy to promote, and all links and information will be in our show notes, but go ahead and put yourself out there, please.
Oh, man. Well, thank you so much for having me. This was really fun. And if you just look at Christina Conway Art, you can get any kind of updates on shows there. You can also contact me to purchase any of the pieces that you see. And then I have the Nipples Zine coming out with the kids. That's at Nipples Gallery on Instagram. I think that's going to be really cool. People are going to enjoy that.
It sounds cool.
Yeah. That's
I got
it.
nipples, Greg. Can you milk me? Oh, that's all I'm thinking of now. Sorry.
It's fun. It's a fun word to say.
It is. It's like teaching your kids how to say butthole. It's fun.
I think it's going to be good.
All right. Thank you, Christina. To all my listeners out there, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you found some inspiration for a practical application when it comes to art, when it comes to painting. And as Christina said, when you're doing this, just expect everything to be unexpected, because that's how it goes. As always, guys, thank you for listening. And until next time, stay golden. Thanks for listening. Please be sure to rate and review, and click that subscribe button for new bi-weekly episodes. As always, the theme music is provided by The Erica Page. Follow us on social media at IPA Sessions Podcast. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and now we have a TikTok and YouTube. All information and links are in the show notes. So show some love and support for these amazing indie artists. And if you'd like to come on and share your journey as an independent artist, reach out to me via email at ipasessionspodcast@gmail.com. Till next time, I hope you found some inspirations for practical application in entertainment.